Thanks again, everybody, for 3 really interesting talks. Do we have any questions from the audience? Oh, good.
Claire, my question is to all of you. The whole theme of this one is building resilient coastal communities, and you guys are doing amazing work, clearly, and there's also, we've heard other work in the last 3 days about, you know, amazing trials that have been occurring. I'm wondering if you guys have been able to collect any data that tries to enables us to measure the long-term impact or projected long-term impact on these communities, that enables, and maybe to the speakers before if they're in the room, that just enables us to kind of understand how are the communities continuing to benefit by having this technology. So in the Maldives, you know, are we able to demonstrate that they're getting better value for their product, or indeed there's more sustainable than pole line fishing. You can't get much more sustainable, but you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm driving at, you know, like, are we able to say that in these smaller places that having these projects and these pilots occur has really built the capacity and enabled the communities to have better food security or better, I guess, Millennium Development Goals kind of outcomes? That would be my wondering at this point.
Sure. Yes, so we are very proud of our impact measurement system. It's something that we take very seriously. In the previous panel, someone was asking, you know, what is the impact, you know, if you're advancing the flow of locally caught products out of a community, you know, what are the implications for that community? This is something that we are quite cognizant of. We know that there is a risk of having unintended consequences. So we do have quite an in-depth impact measurement system. This is based on mainly surveys, and we have, I have to remember, I think that we have at least 3 surveys for fishers and then for buyers as well. And these are rolled out actually continuously, I think every 6 months, maybe once every year. All of the results of those surveys are available live daily. It's updated daily on our website. And we do absolutely take things into account, such as not only the catch statistics, but the social impact, the ecological impact, and even on a community level. So on the south coast of South Africa, we have a SAFET, which is doing very well. It's sort of, I think, we've been assessed, the first one to be assessed on the triple bottom line. I'll have to look up that statistic. But it is very much based on the fact that we are looking at the wider reaching consequences of our work and looking at that over time. We are, very transparent about that. I do recommend checking out our impact page.
It's a really good question. I think with some of the work that we've been doing, it goes back to that collaboration, and I think we introduce sort of one technology trial, but actually then it's often linked to others. So for example, we're currently building a solar-powered ice maker with innovative battery technology. So that's one trial, but then we're linking it with other technology around histamine testing that's for a longer-term project. And unfortunately, that's the nature of sort of NGO-based work. It depends on the funder's needs and what is going on there. So we try to create as much connectivity across our projects. But I think also one of the ways that we see the impact and test the impact and get that feedback from the fishers, from the market partners, is exactly what Chanel sort of mentioned, is you have to be with the fishers for a long time. You have to actually commit to being in that community. And it's a long-term relationship, and that's the only way you're going to see and build that resilience, I think.
Thanks. I'll just add a little bit. Because my project was a little bit broader, I'm just thinking about the work that we do with communities and how, you know, there's a lot of variability around the goals of each of the communities. And so I think, and you can't always quantify that change, and especially in places like I'm thinking of northern Peru, where some of the capacity building is just, getting that data into the hands of the communities and posting it on a wall, in the port so they can see it and talk about it and, get excited about understanding their resources better. So some of those things are hard to put a number on, but as a team at EDF, we do have an effort to be kind of getting to more what you described of defining our impact at scale and our impact of all these different projects and making sure that that's always in mind with all the effort that we put out. So thanks. Other question?
We have a question here. Hello.
Frankie from USAID Soviet. My question is, before my question, I see that women's power since yesterday with the system and technologies, and today we have 3 women in front of us. So give applause for all the women here. So yeah. My question is, what is the role of the woman, especially with the system and technology, especially in the coastal communities, and also what's the challenge so far that you see in the coastal community, especially for the women? Thank you.
Ooh, I have so much to say about this topic. Gender equity is also something that we are very cognizant of, and I think in fisheries, which has sort of predominantly been considered a male-dominated field, what we're finding is that in the value chains, women play a vital role that is often completely unrecognized. In South Africa, I think that we currently have 35 full-time quality control employees, of which 33 are women. So we are, that is something that we try to actively strive for, is the inclusion of these women in, for example, our training programs, but at the same time we drive their acknowledgement, quite simply as being a vital part of the industry. Even though they may not be the ones doing the actual fishing, the supply chain depends hugely on their participation. And I think validating that is an important part of our work. More generally, I think it is also geographically variable. For example, in my work in Palau, it was quite split, and I think that this might be common in various parts of the world, that the men were doing more offshore fishing, whereas the women were doing gleaning, reef gleaning and harvesting. We also do some of our value-added products. Those are very much female-driven and female dominated at the moment. Yeah.
I love that question, thank you. And I actually also noticed when we were standing up, we're all 3 brunette women as well. Don't know why. But I think actually technology itself has a massive role to play in that. So another one of our projects is in the Maldives. We've set up a fintech app specifically for women sellers, because what was happening is the fish is being landed, the women are developing these sort of value-added products that then has to be sent via boat to Male. And what was basically happening is these women are selling, they're giving the products to the captains who are taking it to the market, and then they were either being told that nothing was sold, or they were only getting some of the money back. So this app has basically been developed to create that financial transparency all the way through that has really empowered these women, and now they're sort of building cottage industries. I think, though, the sort of globally speaking, and now I'm going back into some of my master's research, which was in South Africa, is there's also a lot of cultural beliefs, and I think that's one of the biggest barriers. You've got things where it's deemed unlucky if a woman goes onto a boat. In South Africa, I was told about cases where if the man had a bad sort of catch, he would say that the wife had fallen asleep while he was out at sea, and so that cursed the catch, and that often then led to domestic violence. So you've got these wide-ranging issues around women's access that, yeah, they play a massive role in pre- and post-harvest, and it's understanding that, but also understanding the wider context. But definitely, I think technology has that capacity to sort of lift away some of that veil.
Thanks so much for the gender question. I'm happy that it came up. I'm just thinking more broadly in my experience that a lot of times in the fisheries that I've worked in, women have been involved with like the cleaning of the fish or reporting or things, but then when the decision making happens, there's no women at the table or few women, and so just trying to shift that is an exciting opportunity. But thinking more specifically about the project that I'm working on, I learned that in a lot of cases around the world, the fisherman was male, and then a female relative at home, often their wife, would be the one who used the app and understood the app, and and then I thought, well, did the wives come to the training? Did they come to all the meetings? And no, but so maybe we need to think more holistically about who is the real user, of these tools. So yeah, thanks.
Can I follow up? I have a follow-up question around that subject. What is the role of young women, girls? Do you have any see their role in the futures? Are they going still the same sectors, or they go somewhere else?
I'm gonna let you guys shoot for this one.
That's a tough one. That's definitely a tough one. From my experience, so far, I have encountered very, very few young fisher women. Again, I think that their contribution might, at this stage, be largely more invisible rather than actually absent. As you said, they are very much. I know that we have an Irish fisherman whose daughter logs all of his catches for her. So I do think that it's present, often unacknowledged. But that being said, I would say that, and this varies region by region hugely, the contribution in ocean tech, particularly, rather than in fishing, in small-scale fishing, I think might be growing within young women. I really, in Palau, for example, we were working with a local community-based organization that was, and the young girls were massively involved in the sort of marine biology aspect. So not necessarily the fishing, but I mean, it's a very interesting question. Generally, younger generations are not going into fishing, and I think that problem is most certainly more visible amongst young girls, and it is something that we should be thinking about addressing.
You've really got my brain going there. I honestly, that's something now that I really want to dig into. So thank you for that. I can only speak to this anecdotally. I haven't done any research into the sort of role of girls. I do know about sort of younger boys going out on the vessels and starting young, but I think I've seen in some of the fishing communities that the girls are actively involved more sort of at home in preparing the fish, in helping repair the nets. So that pre and post, but more sort of domestic rather than the market. But it's a very interesting question about how do they then get into the market? Is it a case of want or need, of availability of alternative livelihoods? I have many, many questions, so thank you.
Any other question?
Hi, thank you all for those lovely presentations. Just to add on that too, yeah, I think it really depends on the region, the location, and the industry itself. With our work in Indonesia, like especially within seaweed, it was pretty much male dominance. But with our projects in the Philippines, it was completely opposite, and much of the seaweed farmers were female. So yeah, just to add on that. But my question for Kira, you seem to you take a bottom-up approach when it comes to supply chain mapping, starting from the farmer and then going up to the buyers and stuff. And I was just wondering, what is your approach, your reason in doing that? What is the benefits that you find, rather than doing a top-down from like processor to buyer and then so on?
Well, I will preface this answer with my experience is at this stage, I wouldn't say experimental, but certainly limited. From my experience, I would say that the main benefit of doing it that way is most certainly buy-in. It is, and I feel like imposing regulations is, we've tried that. It doesn't generally work very well. I think that in industry, you know, in sort of more industrial spheres, I think that there's it's more effective. And of course, there's a huge role for regulation to play. But I just don't think that it's effective, particularly, well, in the small scale community, where access to a lot of sort of formalized infrastructure and tech is limited, it kind of, they fall through the cracks. So I think that in order to encourage catch logging, it really is just so much more effective to ask the fishers what they need, what they want. It's a great question. I'm trying to explain this. I've always kind of taken it for granted that bottom up is the way to go, and I do truly believe that it is more effective. But yeah, thank you.
Any other question? Okay, Kai.
I have a quick ones, but maybe a bit wider topics to bring on. I'm Arif Shah from Greenpeace. So in terms of I do agree on the long-term relationship with the small-scale fishers. It's really important. So everyone need to invest, particularly the governments, right? So there is also a big concern on the climate crisis impacts to the resilience of the fishings for the small scale. For sure, it's really hard for them to adapt with this kind of. So is there any concern that coming from their own side on how they can adapt these situations? And also maybe in your mind, whether there is also this kind of applications or maybe apps could also help to increase the safety in fishing and also to predict what should be maybe the fishing seasons and so on. So maybe just want to get, because I think the awareness from the fisher itself is really important to oversee all of these external challenges that they cannot maybe sometimes beyond their control. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, so climate change has been so real for the fishers for so many years. They're sort of like, it's something we've been living with for ages. We know that the seasons are changing, the fish availability is totally different, and they're just having to do that sort of almost on the fly adaptation of like, well, the fishing season was shorter this year. Now what do we do looking at secondary livelihoods? And I think that is actually a case where, and this is something we're looking into as an organization, you know, we're looking into the clean energy with the solar powered ice makers. I'm very interested in sort of electric engines, solar powered tracking devices. But at the same time, there's also, you know, we need to listen to the fishers, go, okay, this is how you've been adapting. Can we take those lessons and co-develop sort of longer term strategies? I think also with climate change, it's so much wider and the impacts are so much wider than just the fish availability. So we really, I think particularly as NGOs, have a responsibility to look beyond the people we're interacting with on a daily basis and look at the community as a whole. Government has a lot of responsibility around this as well. And you know, at the moment it seems like it's a bit of a buzzword, but like I say, fishers have been living this for for decades. So who better to go to and learn from than the fishers?
Yeah, just to add to that, completely agreed. I think that the most valuable and complete data set about climate change you could ever get are the people that are on the ocean most often, and for an incredibly long-term period. I do think I'm personally incredibly interested in traditional ecological knowledge and the way that that plays into sort of technology and decision-making today. But I do think that, I mean, we recently we had an organization-wide indaba with many of our South African fishers present, and one of the activities was to write down changes that they've noticed in their environment over the last 30 years or so. And I mean, I'm not studying climate change in South Africa for sure, but I am ready to bet that there are phenomena that are being witnessed and experienced by fishers that are not being studied, and that means that, you know, decisions can't be made about that because there's no direct line between a small-scale fisher and a legislator at this stage, which is what we're trying to remedy. And I think that giving a voice is it's not a great phrase, but giving that information a home and giving that and documenting it firstly, and secondly, building trust around that, trust in sort of non-scientific information, if we can call it that, I think is a very, very important way to advance our understanding of that phenomenon.
I hate to interrupt the flow of questions, but this room is slated to move to a special session next. So thank you for all those questions, and thank you to our three panelists. Appreciate it very much, and to our previous three women panelists as well. So let's give these people a hand, and thanks again for being here.